All right, in this example, what we're going to do is we are going to modify our random quote generator that we used on the last lab. I removed the timer on it, and what we're going to do this time is we put a button on the page. So we have a form named My Form. I've added a button named My Button. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at a couple of different ways to handle events. So what we're going to do is we're going to write some code just to do some random things. Instead of a timer showing our quote, we'll have the click of a button execute our function to write our random quote. And then what we'll do is we'll also just take a look at the on mouse over and on mouse out events, and we'll change the display of that using events on that. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up an event listener. I am going to use an event listener for my button. And so what I need to do is I need to set up that object. I'm going to name it My Button, and it's going to be equal to, I'm going to go to the document, I'm going to go to My Form, and I'm going to grab My Button. You could just as easily use the get element by ID if you wanted to, but I'm just showing you just a couple of different ways you can do it if you choose to. So now that I have that set up, I can use the add event listener, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen for the click event on this button, and then what I'll do is I'll tell it to call our write random quote. So I'm going to say My Button dot add event listener, and we're going to feed it two parameters. We're going to feed it what it's listening for, and then we're going to tell it what function it's going to call. So I'm going to tell it to send in write random quote. Now you have to be careful here because you're not going to call write random quote here. You're sending that function in as a parameter. And so what you don't want to do is you don't want to put the empty quotes for write random quote there right here. Normally you would have quotes there to receive parameters. So this isn't a function call. You're sending it into the event listener, and the event listener itself will call the function. So what happens is this form sits here with this button on it. This line of code says, all right, button, sit there and listen for the click event. And when you hear that click event, then the event listener will fire this function. So let's go ahead and give that a try. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And we're going to, oops, that's it in the future. So there's our click button. And then it listens and it hears that click event. And every time I click it, it hears that event again and it fires our function. So that's an event listener on a button. The second thing I'm going to do in this example is I'm going to show you how to use the to call events using, or to listen for events using the HTML attribute. And so it's not technically listening to it like an event listener is, but you add it to the HTML attribute that it's going to be tied to, and it will then call that function if it hears or sees that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add an add mouse over event, meaning when the user moves their mouse over, it's kind of like the hover pseudo class in HTML. And when the on mouse over event is triggered with this attribute, it's going to call a function that we're going to write named change color. And then I'm going to go ahead and do our on mouse out event, and I'm going to say when that one fires, we're going to have a function named change back. So this is a mouse over event that will change the appearance of our H1. And notice that I added that to the H1. This is an HTML attribute, so it is actually part of HTML, just like ID is, just like src is for images, things like that. And so when it detects that the on mouse over attribute has deployed, it will call this function, and same with that. So we need to go up here and write our functions. So I'm going to do our function is going to be change color, and we're going to set up our holder element, document, I'm going to go ahead and use get element by ID here just to show you that you can. And we're going to use the element that we've named holder down here. See, we have our ID equals holder. So we're going to set that up. So now we can go ahead and use the methods of that. We're going to change the style. We're going to change the background color of it. And we'll set that equal to red just because. And then I'm going to do holder style dot color is going to be equal to white. So we're going to have white text on a red background when the mouse over occurs. But I need to change this to background color. That's right. All right. So when we mouse over, change color is going to occur, and it's going to change the background color to red, and it's going to change the font color to white. So I'm just going to go ahead and write the other one as well. Function change back. And this time we're going to set up our holder document again too. Element by ID. And then we're going to change the background color back to white. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use our random color that we generated up here. Because, like I said, that I told you this earlier, that scope of variables is a little wackadoodle. We can use that. So we're going to go ahead and do holder dash style dot color is going to be equal to random color that was generated previously in our program. So this changes it, and then this changes it back to what it was. So let's go ahead and save that, see if we have any typos. We reload our page, we click it, and it looks like we have a typo. So let's go ahead and open up our developer tools and see what, I know which curly braces I've already missed. It looks like I also have write random quote is not defined. So it looks like I might have a couple of errors. So let's go back here on that last function. I know I forgot a curly brace. And what was the error message on the other one? Let me reload. Click. So there it is. Cannot set property color on line 19. Holder dot style dot color. All right, I think we have it now. So we reload, we click, we click, we click, and as long as we click, it stays there. But when I mouse over, I get my mouse over event triggering the change to red background, and when I mouse away, it goes back to the random color. Okay, so that's our example of a couple of different ways to handle events, and a couple of different events to handle. In the next one example, we're going to go ahead and spend quite a bit of time on the drag and drop example. You have to do one on your lab, and there's extensive examples on this in the chapter, so that's what we're going to head for next.